So we are going to cover Bernie Sanders' Senate resolution story that came out the other day. And unfortunately, as is probably not much of a surprise, senators overwhelmingly reject the resolution, which could have imposed conditions on billions the U.S. sends to Israel.
Oh, they're not going to do that.
No. So the measure was confirmed in the Senate, 89-11. I mean, I would really like to see what the vote would look like if it was done in the House. I think we would all like to know what that vote would look like. The only GOP senator who crossed over to vote with Bernie Sanders, of course, was Rand Paul. Pretty much everybody else is just a stickler. We all know that in the House, the one person who has spoken up very vocally about what's going on has been Thomas Massie, which is kind of interesting, too, because Thomas Massie is a very staunch supporter of Governor DeSantis. I think that has more to do with the fact that they were in the Freedom Caucus together and they just kind of stick together. But this is a very big problem. Senators overwhelmingly voted against the motion late on Tuesday. It would have demanded that security aid to Israel be frozen unless the Department of State, well, just say the State Department, but it is Al Jazeera, so it's from, I guess it's how it's framed in other countries. Produces a report within 30 days examining whether Israel has committed human rights violations in its campaign in Gaza. You think? What do you think, Jim?
I think that every day that every person in our body of government stands strong on the wrong side of this is one more day that should be added to their sentence when they're tried for genocide and war crimes.
72 senators voted to set the resolution aside versus 11 who backed it, easily clearing the simple majority needed to kill the resolution in the 100-member chamber. The vote was forced by Senator Bernie Sanders, an independent who...
But yet, here's the problem I have with this. It's almost like one of those things like a kente cloth tails. It's like he's putting it up there knowing damn well it's not going to pass, and yet he still didn't call for a ceasefire. So I don't understand. So you're wanting to condition aid, but you won't call for a ceasefire. It's akin to, which we did not talk about, what my understanding of the Joe Biden 100-day speech, wherein the word Palestinian was not mentioned, Gaza was not mentioned. And I just find that unbelievable. But this is the same thing. So Bernie Sanders is putting forward this resolution knowing it's not going to pass, but somehow trying to get points.
Sanders' resolution was filed under the Foreign Assistance Act, which allows Congress to direct the state to provide a human rights report and other information on any country receiving U.S. security assistance. Well, it seems that that's the case in every country but Israel. And they can do whatever they want. And so now we're going to play you a clip so you get an idea of just how bad this really is.
Now, a vote against this resolution, which I have a hard time really understanding, it says, quote, I don't want more information. I'm going to vote against this resolution. I don't want a report from the State Department. I don't want to know how U.S. military aid in Israel is being used. I don't want to know what responsibility the United States may have for this humanitarian disaster.
This is what I'm saying.
I want to keep my head in the sand. I don't want to see what's going on.
But that's what I've been saying for a long time. Every single person in Congress that is on the wrong side on this is willfully ignorant. The information is there. They know. They just don't care. They can actually look at pictures of these babies and not care. They don't care. And so and he knows that they don't care, which then brings me to the fact that this is all theater. And that disappoints me very much about Bernie, because here's the thing, just like an attorney, you don't ever ask a question in court that you don't already know the answer to. You don't put up a bill when you don't know whether or not it's going to pass. He knew damn well this wasn't going anywhere. So this is performative theater, and that just pisses me off.
And on top of everything else, you look at and this is something that Ryan Grimm, who we're hoping will be able to get on the show next week, he even said, and Ryan Grimm is really connected in D.C., and he said, I understand that there was going to be ridiculous, over-the-top backlash post-October 7th because of the fact that most people are uninformed. But I thought it would get to a point where maybe a few thousand babies slaughtered would get people to wake up. You now have almost 15,000 that have been slaughtered, and people are still not waking up. And that is shocking to him.
we're so far past that number. I do not understand why we keep focusing on this number. I don't care whether you say it's 27, 28, 30. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They're starving and they're having disease. Right. The chain of events is in motion. And I want to reiterate this point. And Sam Cedar covered this. They had somebody on who, a doctor that was specifically talking about this, that in Gaza right now, they're seeing children dying of cardiac arrest. These children, 7 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old, these kids out of complete lack of sleep and malnourishment and complete fear, that they don't sleep and they live in fear, that there are now several reported cases of children having cardiac arrests. We're scaring them to death. That's what's happening. And he knows it and they know it and none of them care.
And frankly, Mr. President, no matter what your view on this terrible war may be.
It's not a war.
Agree with me, you don't agree with me.
See, this is where he's
We cannot bury our eyes in the sand. The reason as to why this resolution must be passed today is that right now as we speak, hundreds of thousands of children in Gaza, innocent children, are starving right before our eyes. We cannot turn away. We must act. What the vote was on yesterday was to have the State Department do a study on whether or not Israel was violating international law and human rights.
You don't need a study.
We see it. We know.
You know it.
We don't need a conviction.
And everybody who's out there who's covering it, and frankly, I don't care if it's a bunch of grifting assholes that are making money off of this. It is what it is. And we know who they are, and some of them I absolutely despise. Point being is they're still covering it in broad daylight. They know what's going on, and you hear it from the Israeli State Department constantly, how they admit that they are committing a genocide, that they do not see a way. And remember, they're always going to use the name Hamas in front of Palestinians because it's how they can justify what they're doing. Like Norman Finkelstein said with Katie Halper the other day, could you imagine the reaction if Hamas said we were mowing the lawn in Israel? Because that's what Israel does in Gaza.
Well, right, no, but to these people, this really started on October 7th. And the other thing that is definitely not getting the coverage it needs, and of course we talk about it, is the liberty that people in the West Bank have now been taking to just be running rampant and massacring people left and right. They are being authorized to do so by the IOF. Like, they are being given weapons. The settlers are out there attacking people. You've had so many deaths in the West Bank that aren't even being reported, and arrests. Of course, we know what happens is that those people do not get due process. There are a lot of teenagers that are being held in Israel. I don't remember Biden mentioning them on the 100-day speech. And, you know, a whole bunch of people that are there for, you know, like throwing rocks because their homes are getting bulldozed.
Well, I mean, if somebody throws a rock, I feel like my life is in imminent danger.
Well, I mean, and
I have to
that's
fight
the kind of stuff.
back.
And not just that, but other activists, they definitely take activists. But like, when at this point, when you look at, they just killed 4 members of the Red Crescent Society. Now, if people don't know what the Red Crescent is, it's essentially the Red Cross. It's their Red Cross. It's a Red Crescent, but these are the people that are just trying to help everybody, that run around and help people. They just killed 4 Red Crescent workers.
How about the fact that the IDF has bombed every single hospital in Gaza to smithereens?
And then they say, oh, well, it's Hamas. It's Hamas. It's Hamas. Did you condemn Hamas? And Hamas uses human shields. Okay, but then explain this to me. Why are they digging up all the cemeteries and desecrating all the bodies in Gaza? Because they've already dug up like 3, 4, like I don't even know how many cemeteries, like a bunch of them. And they're desecrating dead bodies, which for me as a Jewish person is like one of the worst possible things. And the fact that they're doing that in the name of a Jewish state, they're desecrating. That's how little they think of Palestinians.
As I said, the Jewish community is never coming back from this. This will reverberate.
But it's like, you can't tell me that you're digging up graves because Hamas is hiding there.
There's got to be a separation.
and given the fact that many of the weapons that Israel has used in the last 100 days come from the United States of America, we certainly have a right to know that.
Senator Merkley writing that trucks filled with food, water, and medical supplies are lined up waiting to be granted entry into Gaza, even if all the items on a truck have been pre-approved by Israel to ensure they are not, quote, dual-use items that have a potential military purpose. Israeli authorities can and do still reject some items as an inspection site, and then this is interesting, and if a single item is rejected, the entire truckload is rejected. How concerned are people, you and your colleagues, about the specter of mass starvation, which is what the World Food Program is warning about?
To me, it's unbelievable. I mean, how do you say concerned? I would hope that we're more than concerned. We are sitting here supplying the Netanyahu government with the arms they need and in the process of starving hundreds of thousands of children. Concern is too modest a word. We have got to act, and we've got to act now.
Yeah, people, the stuff that's being sent there, the supplies, the humanitarian aid, it's not getting in. Israel's not letting it in. Now, Qatar, apparently, I don't know how, was able to get in 5 truckloads of medical supplies. Now, 5 truckloads for a population of 2.2 million is like nothing, but somehow Qatar was able to get some medical supply, 5 truckloads of medical supplies in. Other than that, the aid that we're sending in, stuff coming through the border at Egypt and Rafah crossing, Israel's not letting it in, people. There's thousands of trucks lined up in the desert. And that's right. And if they reject one thing, and they could reject something like, hypothetically, a toolkit. There could be a toolkit in there because these people are having to dig out themselves and with their hands because they're not allowed equipment. They're not allowed heavy equipment. So let's say somebody sends in a toolbox with a toolkit, that whole truck of supplies could get totally discarded because those tools could be used as military weapons.
You know, the thing that I realized with Bernie giving his speech as well as speaking to Chris Hayes on MSNBC is that you could hear where Bernie was speaking in the Senate, in the dome area of the Senate when he was speaking. I call it the dome, whatever. The
Rotunda.
Bernie was again, this is, you have to have authorization to go up there, but once you're at a certain level within the Capitol Rotunda, this is where the press, the corporate press, is allowed to interview congresspeople and senators. And you could hear when Bernie was speaking that he's basically speaking and no one's there, meaning that no one cares.
No. Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.